Good morning friends. So today we are going to discuss about the layout of the diesel power plant, and we are going to see the four stroke diesel engine and two-stroke diesel engine working. So working of two-stroke diesel engine and as well as four-stroke diesel engine. So this is about the diesel power plant, layout of the diesel power plant. So we have a air intake system. So here we have a air intake system and fuel supply system, and we have a cooling system, and also we have a lubrication system and exhaust gases escaping system. So first one is the air intake system, second is the exhaust system, then fuel supply system, fourth one is the cooling system, and fifth one is the lubrication system. These are the five important systems we are using in the diesel power plant. We are not seeing the layout of the diesel power plant, but we are going to focus on working of the engine, working of the four-stroke diesel engine as well as the two-stroke diesel engine. So this diagram belongs to four-stroke diesel engine. So here we have a four strokes engine, four strokes of the piston and four strokes of the piston, and two complete revolutions of the crankshaft will be done. So the main four strokes are suction stroke, compression stroke, expansion stroke, and fourth one is the exhaust stroke. So we have a inlet valve and exhaust valve. So the terminology we are using, so here IV is the inlet valve, DV is the exhaust valve. Then we have a fuel injector at the top. So this is about the fuel injector. So this is about the piston. So this is about piston. So this is about the TDC and this is about the BDC. The piston traveling, the distance traveled by the piston, the distance traveled by the piston we call it as a stroke, length of the stroke. So that we call it as a TDC to BDC. So the distance traveled by the piston is called as a stroke. So the piston is TDC means the piston extreme position at the top of the cylinder. The piston extreme position at the top of the cylinder we call it as a TDC, and bottom extreme position of the bottom of the cylinder we call it as a BDC. So the piston will be moving up and down, to and fro motions. It will be reciprocating. In the engine cylinder, piston will be reciprocating. So during the suction stroke, the piston moves from TDC to BDC. The piston moves from top dead center to bottom dead center. So before going to the working of the four-stroke engine, so first we should know the terminology. So that's FI is the fuel injector, IV is inlet valve, and EV is exhaust valve. So this is about a connecting rod. CR is the connecting rod. So connecting rod connects the piston and crankshaft. Connecting rod connects the piston and crankshaft. One end of the connecting rod is connected to the piston. Another end of the connecting rod is connected to the crankshaft. So here we have a four strokes: suction stroke, compression stroke, so then power or expansion stroke, and fourth one is the exhaust stroke. During the suction stroke, whenever the piston moves from TDC to BDC, bottom, whenever the so this is about four-stroke diesel engine. The piston moves from TDC to BDC. So here in the engine cylinder, vacuum will be created. So here in the engine cylinder, vacuum will be created. Whenever the piston moves from TDC to BDC, piston moves from TDC to BDC, here the vacuum will be created inside of the engine cylinder. So during the suction stroke, so the inlet valve will be opened and exhaust valve will be in the closed position. So during the suction stroke, the air will be sucked into the engine cylinder. So due to the pressure differences, so the pressure is less than to compare to the outside atmospheric pressure. So then the air will be admitted, the air will be admitted into the engine cylinder. The air will be admitted into the engine cylinder during the suction stroke. So during the suction stroke, what happened? So the piston moves from TDC to BDC. Vacuum will be created inside of the engine cylinder. Here the vacuum will be created, so that pressure is less than compared to the outside atmospheric pressure. Then the pressure air will be admitted. That air will be sucking into the engine cylinder. The air will be sucking into the engine cylinder through the inlet valve. Through the inlet valve, the air will be sucking into the engine cylinder. So this is the first stroke, that is about suction stroke. During the suction stroke, this exhaust valve is closed position. Exhaust valve is the closed position. So inlet valve will be open. That air alone will be admitted into the engine cylinder. So this is about first stroke. So now coming to the compression stroke. Second one is the compression stroke. So during the compression stroke, the piston moves from BDC to TDC. The piston moves bottom to top. The piston moves from bottom to top dead center. So here during the compression stroke, both inlet valve and exhaust valves, you can see the diagram, both inlet valve and exhaust valves are the closed position. Both inlet and exhaust valves are the closed position. So here the piston moves from BDC to TDC. So here vacuum, whatever the air is there, that air will be compressed. So here the air will be there, so that air will be compressed. So whenever the piston moves from BDC to TDC, so here the vacuum, whatever pressure inside the engine cylinder, that pressure will be air will be compressed. So air will be compressed, so that air will be compressed. That means temperature and pressure will goes on increasing. Temperature and pressure will goes on increasing. So at the end of the compression, so we are giving the fuel. Fuel will be injected to the high temperature air or high pressurized and high temperature of air. So during the compression stroke, what happened? So that air will be compressed. That means compressed means so that the temperature pressure will goes on increasing during the compression stroke. So at the end of the compression, that fuel will be injected. Fuel will be injected into the engine cylinder. Fuel will be injected to the engine cylinder. That ignition takes place in the engine cylinder. Ignition takes place in the engine cylinder. So whatever the fuel, during the compression stroke, both inlet valves and exhaust valves are the closed position, so that the air will be compressed due to the piston movement. The piston moves from BDC to top dead center, bottom to top. That air is compressed so that the pressure and temperature will goes on increasing. So at the end of the compression, so that fuel will be ignited, the fuel will be injected, so that air will be ignited by using the fuel droplets. So that here we in the engine cylinder, that high temperature and high pressurized air will be present. So at the end of the compression, that fuel will be injected there, so that air will be ignited by using the fuel injector. So the fuel will be injected into the engine cylinder, then combustion takes place. Combustion takes place inside the engine cylinder. The combustion takes place inside the engine cylinder. So at the end of the compression, that the fuel will be injected to the engine cylinder, combustion takes place. So whenever the hot gases are so the combustion takes place, that means work on the piston due to the hot gases expand, then again the hot gases pushes the piston towards downside. That means the piston moves from TDC to BDC again. The working stroke, what happened during the compression as well as expansion, that is about third stroke, both inlet and exhaust valves are the closed position. Both inlet and exhaust valves are the closed position. So what happened in the due to the hot gas expansion, that hot gases pushes the piston towards the downside. That means piston moves from TDC to BDC again. Right. So this is about expansion strokes. So in the fourth stroke, that is about exhaust stroke. So the piston moves from BDC to TDC. In the 4 stroke, what happened is piston moves from BDC to TDC. So this exhaust valve is opened. Exhaust valve is opened. The products of the combustion in the form of smoke, the emissions, the products of the combustion will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust valve. So these exhaust gases, products of the combustion will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust valve. So this is about exhaust stroke. So during the exhaust stroke, the exhaust valve will be opened. Exhaust valve will be opened. The products of the combustion like CO, CO2, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, like that. So these gases will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust valve. So during the exhaust, the inlet valve will be opened and exhaust valve will be, inlet valve is closed and exhaust valve will be opened. Then the exhaust gases will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust valve. So during the suction stroke, the inlet valve will be opened, exhaust valve is closed. And during the exhaust stroke, suction stroke is closed and exhaust valve will be opened. During the compression and expansion stroke, both inlet valve and exhaust valves are the closed position. So this is about the 4-stroke diesel engine. These are the 4-stroke suction, compression, expansion and exhaust. These are the 4-stroke engine. So now we'll move to 2-stroke engine, 2-stroke diesel engine. So here we have a So these are the 2-stroke engine. So in the 4-stroke engine we have valves, inlet valve, exhaust valve, like that. Here we have a transfer port, inlet port and exhaust port. We have a 3 ports: inlet port, exhaust port and transfer port. Inlet port, exhaust port and transfer port. So we have a ports. In the 4-stroke engine we have a valves. So that valves will be operated by crankshaft, cam mechanism. So the valve will be operated by camshaft. So here we are using separate mechanism for operating the valves. But whereas in the 2-stroke engine, so due to the piston movement only, the valves, the ports will be covering and uncovering. So the exhaust port, transfer port, inlet port are open and closed, covering and uncovering by due to the piston movement only. Due to the piston movement only, these inlet and exhaust ports are opening, or covering or uncovering by due to the piston movement only. So here in the 2-stroke we have a upward stroke and downward stroke, and downward stroke. So during the upward stroke, so the piston moves from bottom to top. So here you can observe this diagram. So we have a inlet port, exhaust port and transfer port. One more difference is in the 4-stroke engine, the air or whatever air fuel mixture will comes to the directly to the engine cylinder. But whereas in the 2-stroke engine, the air or air fuel mixture will not directly enter into the engine cylinder. But here that air or air fuel mixture will enter into the combustion chamber. So then from the combustion chamber it will be moving to the engine cylinder. So that is one more difference of the 2-stroke and 4-stroke engine. In the 4-stroke engine, air alone will be admitted into the engine cylinder. But in case of 2-stroke engine, that air will not enter directly into the engine cylinder. First it comes to the combustion chamber. It will be entering into the crankcase. First it will be entering into the crankcase. Then from the crankcase it will be goes to the engine cylinder through the transfer port. So what happened in the suction, in the upward stroke of the piston, the moment the piston moves from upward towards the upside, when the piston moves from top side, upward side, so that air will be admitted into this crankcase. So the main difference, so we have seen that air will be enter in the 4-stroke engine, that air will be directly enter into the engine cylinder. But here in the 2-stroke engine, that air will be enter into the crankcase first. So during the upward stroke, that inlet port will be opened, that air will be enter into the crankcase. So previous, whatever the air is admitted into the previous, that air will be compressed during the further upward movement of the piston. So whatever air will be present in the engine cylinder, that air will be compressed. So at the end of the compression, so here the fuel will be injected. So this air fuel mixture, air will be ignited by using fuel injector. So in case of petrol engine, that air fuel mixture will be ignited by using spark plug. In case of petrol engine, SI engines, that air fuel mixture, air plus fuel will be entered into the engine cylinder. That air fuel mixture will be ignited by using spark plug. But in the diesel engine, instead of spark plug, we have a fuel injector. We have a fuel injector. That fuel will be injected to the engine cylinder. Whatever air will be there, so that air during the upward stroke, both suction and compression will be done. At the compression, that air will be compressed, so that pressure and temperature will goes on increasing. Pressure and temperature will goes on increasing. So that high temperature and high pressurized air will be ignited by with the help of fuel injected into the engine cylinder. Alright. So this is about upward stroke. So due to the upward movement of the piston, so the inlet port will be opened, fresh air will comes to the crankcase. So whatever air will be present in the engine cylinder, that air will be compressed. So at the end of the compression, that air fuel mixture will be ignited by air is ignited by using a fuel injected. So due to the hot gases expansion, again the piston pushes, that hot gas expands. Due to the expansion, that hot gases pushes the piston towards downside. So what happened in the downward stroke? So exhaust port will be open. So these exhaust port will be open. These exhaust gases, whenever piston moves from towards downside, so exhaust port will be open. So these exhaust port will be open. These hot gas, burnt gases, products of the combustion will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust port. So burnt gases will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust port. So further downward movement of the piston. So these transfer port also will be there. These transfer port will be open. So this whatever fresh charge enter into the crankcase during the suction stroke, that will be transferred to the engine cylinder. Through the transfer port. So due to the piston movement only, both inlet port and exhaust port and transfer port will be covering and uncovering due to the piston movement only. So piston movement only, due to the piston movements, it will be covering and uncovering the ports. What happened in the downward stroke? Due to the gases expansion, it will be pushing the piston towards downside. So exhaust port will be open, that burnt gases will be escaping. Burnt gases, products of the combustion will goes to the atmosphere through the exhaust port, and whatever the gases will be there, so that gases during the suction stroke, what gases are entered, so that gases will be goes to the engine cylinder from the crankcase. That is the transferring from crankcase to engine cylinder. Transfer port transferring from crankcase to engine cylinder. So this is about 2-stroke diesel engine. So I hope you are understanding the concept of 4-stroke diesel engine and 2-stroke diesel engine.